Okay, guys, while we are rolling with the momentum and the truck is still warm, let's go ahead and do an oil change on the 1976 F150. It's actually only got maybe about 1,500 miles, maybe even less, on this oil change, but I did it in, I think, March of 2020. It is now July of 2023. And that's just kind of how this goes. I don't put a ton of miles on this, and then it just had 1,000 hard miles, right? All in over the course of 2 days. So for the cost of oil, especially, I'll talk about the oil in a second, but for the cost of oil and what we just found, how freaking awesome the compression is on this. Got a nice healthy engine. All things considered, oil's cheap. Change your oil. It's not a bad way to go. This is going to be the Northwest Collector Auto Repair signature oil change, and I will do this is how I would do it on my truck. This is how I would do it on my wife's beloved CRV. This is how I would do it on a $200,000 Porsche. That's how I do all my oil changes. I don't see any reason to take shortcuts. It's something you do over and over again. I do my oil changes around a time where I can spend, honestly, a couple of hours, including drain time. If it's just sitting around, I never rush an oil change. I do it around a time where I can do it right. I use it as an excuse to check a bunch of other things. I clean everything. Maybe it's my background in aerospace. I just treat every oil change like it's the most important thing in the world. And you should too. And I'm going to show you how I do it. But enough nonsense of me just pointing a camera at the goods for the job. Let's get to work. So very first things first, we have 35344. I'm 99% sure everything points to that being 135,344 miles. The oil change was done last. I don't even know if that'll... Oh, yeah. So 133,310. Oh, come on. So for mileage, it's early, but still only, 2,000 miles. It's certainly not dramatically early, but that was May of 2020. So the way I do my oil changes, the hard and fast, a lot of times, a shop will put it 5,000, 3, 4, 5,000 miles ahead. Come on. I want to know when it was done. I can gauge myself on my own vehicle. So what I do is the date and mileage I put on these stickers is the date it was done and the mileage it was done at. That is a hard and fast number. There's no speculation. There's no, oh, you should do it at this time. Oh, it probably should be done then. That's when it was done. And so that's how come on. That is how I track my oil changes. You'll also get a better view from down below, but there's the filter. I put the date and the mileage. I realized there's actually 1 digit off on the sticker. This was done at 133,130, so that means that there are about 2,200 miles on this oil change. Once again, kind of early, but it's very cheap peace of mind, all things considered, especially with 3-year-old oil. It doesn't break down as badly as some people will lead you to believe, because a lubricant is a lubricant, but oil does go bad over a very, very long time. So all that to say, this is kind of preemptive, but I'm filming it. I'm showing you guys exactly how I do it and my whole process start to finish. Next step is, what are we actually working with? What is the condition of the oil? So our raw pull, this is not an accurate gauge of the level, but it'll give you an idea of the color. I don't know if it's going to... Well, either way, this is a relatively clean rag. Let's get a nice little slick here. So, again, that's also not that's not filthy, and really this is just speculative. Not speculative. I want to get the oil change done, especially since we know that we just put some gas in the cylinders when we were doing the compression test. So this is just, I love this vehicle. Oil's cheap. We're going to get it done. So we do our clean wipe. Let's see if you can actually... There. Add and safe. So that's our range. Let's go back in. Make sure it's fully seated. 1, 2, 3. Okay. There we go. So even still, this just does not want... Okay. Well, you can kind of see. It is pretty much exactly halfway down. So that is perfect. This does leak oil. I haven't categorically seen that it burns oil, but there we go. That's what we know. That's our benchmark. It's a fair color for the miles. It's a good color for the miles, actually. And we're at a good level. So what you don't want to find is if you find out you've been burning oil, if you go to do an oil change and we're about to drain it and just kind of eyeball it and see how much comes out, we now know that it is exactly halfway up the gauge. That is just exactly what we want to see. But if you're doing an oil change and you don't check your dipstick and you go to drain it, and so like I said, this takes 6 quarts and 2.5 quarts come out, you had your chance to check it and say, wow, it's super low, or are you going, well, for some weird reason, is there still a bunch sitting in the engine? Just methodically go step by step and you'll know everything you need to know going forward. All right, so this is the point where I suspect it's going to get ugly and the footage might be absolutely garbage. So get your drain pan here. First and foremost, as you saw from the earlier still, this holds 15 quarts. Make sure you have a container that is large enough to catch all the oil, to prevent messes, of course. And you also want to make sure that, well, I guess you don't have to, but so 15 quarts, I get this completely bone dry, or as close to it as I can, the drain container that is. Get it completely dry, so if you have to go back and measure, if you're really a stickler and you want to go back and measure how much actually came out, you can do it without having any leftovers inside. So the good thing about doing this kind of work yourself, especially year over year, I did the last oil change on this. I know how tight I got the drain plug. I know how tight I got the oil filter, all those things, because then if it ends up being super hard, it's like, well, I can't blame anyone for it. Now, as we're going for the drain plug, if you've watched my earlier videos, I've talked about 6 versus 12 point. So this is a 6-point socket, 1/2-inch drive. This is a 12-point combination wrench. And you're kind of, they'll both get her off, but I prefer, whenever possible, using 6-point on 6-point, obviously, sockets, or 6-point hardware, either nuts or bolts. The reason being is you have mechanical engagement on all 6 faces with a good sharp angle at each of the 6 points. This one, well, you do have better leverage of having a fixed wrench, so you don't have the play of a ratchet, when you're going to break it loose. Rather than having 12, that gives you 12 angles of contact, which is great for getting in tight spaces, but you only have, or the point, only 6 of these are being engaged at any point. And of those 6, just at a glance, this is a overall rounder surface. So those are literally corners that you're cutting in getting a better angle on that piece of hardware. Is I have 12 points to come at, but less actual mechanical engagement. And you can even, we'll see if we can kind of, very little play there. And this might look exactly the same, but it's in principle just a little bit more play. So at the risk of rounding something off, I just think of, let's say you have flathead screwdriver. That's 2 faces of mechanical engagement. That is a great fit, as long as it's a closed tolerance fit. 3, you have a triangle. It's just mathematically from there, the more points of contact you have, the less actual surface area when hardware in question is 6-point. All that to say, we are going to hopefully get to break this loose just with the ratchet. Like I said, I did this last time. Let's see. Good. Make sure it's seated all the way flush. And I might make a liar out of myself, but I think I should be able to just, there you go. See that? This doesn't, well, it leaks from everywhere else, but it doesn't leak from the drain bolt. You saw how hard I had to push. Barely at all. And already, the other thing is, this is my drain plug bolt. I replaced it myself. I used a copper washer. You can reuse them. I usually just kind of make sure they're in good shape, flip them over, and if they're leaking, replace them. But just when you're doing all this stuff yourself, you can make all these choices, and I can treat my dumb old 1976 F-150 like a Ferrari. You know what? Because I want to. Another fun point. Let's see if I can get it. Make sure the opening, so if you have a solid top drain pan like this, make sure you actually take the valve out. I've done that before and looked at it and gone, wow, it's just really not flowing. And then had to dive in and open that up because I'm a goober and I didn't pay attention first. Can we do it by hand? Yep, there we go. So, last of it by hand. And for all the things I love about this truck, not the best design for draining oil. As you can, well, I guess the steering's in the way, but it is draining onto the cross member. It's just, that's gravity. There's nothing I can do about it. But as you can see here, this oil is dirtier. And so I do not think this is premature, though. Mileage-wise, we would be okay. So, all right, now get ready for the bloodbath. Slow and steady. And also, before it comes off all the way, I can tell the copper washer is stuck to the bolt. I will just keep track of it with my thumb and make sure it doesn't go flying, but keep track of your drain plug washer, because sometimes it'll stick to the oil pan, sometimes it'll stick to the bolt, sometimes it'll fly off and go into your oil pan. Just another little thing to be considerate of. And this will, of course, go flying as soon as I come it off, as I bring it off all the way. I'll be ready. I keep one hand on my drain pan down here, because a lot of times you need a last minute little wiggle in one direction or another. I can feel the washer has come loose in my left hand, so I'm just making sure to stick it against the bolt. Still walking out. Oh, that's it. There we go. Center your pan. So, another thing, when do you change your, or what's the best time to change your oil? I do it when, we were doing the compression test earlier. Get it warm to hot, and then shut it off, and then let it sit for a bit. That's why I call it the 3-hour oil change. I want it to sit for as long as it needs to while still being warm to get every bit of oil into the pan that I possibly can. You can see this is tapering off. There's a solid chance if you went to a Jiffy Lube, or I don't want to say names. You go to a drive-through fast service oil change place. If you coast in there at 4:55 and they close at 5 p.m., there's a really good chance that they are going to just take the drain plug off for 30 seconds, stick it in, and move on with their day. I would say the minority do that. I don't want to scare anyone that does get drive-through oil changes, but this, to me, you're relying exclusively on gravity for a fluid to drain out. And that's why I do like to do it warm rather than cold. I guess if you want to get every last bit, you want it to be after it's, let it sit for a week and then come back and drain your oil, because that's when every last bit's going to be out of it. But the balance of doing it warm, I think, allows it to flow a little more quickly, and it's been, stirred up more recently, so you can potentially capture more fluids from up top. So it's going to drain for a bit. Next thing we'll do, I'll set up the camera somewhere else, and we will take out the oil filter, but we're just going to let it drain for now. Another item where this varies from vehicle to vehicle is you always want to pop off your fill plug on the vehicle, because a lot of times it is actually an airtight seal. And if you have your oil cap sealed shut, you'll get sort of like a glub effect, and it won't come out clean because there's no air from the top to clear the space. This vehicle has 2 PCV ports, one here, that is actually a PCV valve. This one from the factory was a PCV valve that fed into the intake, but I have a different style air intake on it. So this is just a filler cap breather. It just kind of, the oil mists into it. I really should go back and plumb it back into the intake just to be OEM spec. But as you can see here, this is not a very good seal really. And so ultimately, I didn't need to worry about popping this off to break that seal. Next thing we'll talk about while we're here is oil. This, honestly, there are 1,000 videos on different oils and different oil change intervals and synthetic versus non-synthetic. What I'm doing here, I don't like to do the do as I say, not as I do, but the vehicle we have with the lowest, or I guess highest tolerance for variety of oils is this bad boy here. One thing that I am adamant about is using at least one, usually 2 quarts of high zinc oil. The ratio there, so I use either 10W30 or 10W40. I was at a garage sale and I got a case of this Supreme 10W30 SAE non-synthetic. I got a case of it for $1 each, so I think that's 12, 6. I think there's 12 or 16 quarts of this stuff. This is the only vehicle I would do this in. The Land Rovers are also pretty flexible just because it's an older style V8. The oil tolerances for this truck versus all of our other vehicles, especially like the pickiest I would say is our Honda CR-V and my Audi A4. Those I am adamant there is one brand, one consistency, only synthetic. The truck, you've got some leeway. So my ratio is 2 quarts of high zinc. The reason you use high zinc is because of the camshaft, actually. And once again, there's a bunch of videos on that. Basically, the machine tolerance on the camshaft and the lifters and the followers, kind of like we were going over in the Land Rover video. Zinc was standard in oil for many years, and they stopped doing it, I think, in the 70s, maybe in the 80s, just because of the ecological impact. But zinc is an actual, mineral additive to oil that creates a even better sort of glazing lubricant interface between the metal parts in the engine. You're okay if you do regular oil changes. You're okay doing regular oil without high zinc content. But if you're using a high zinc oil, that is the closest you can get nowadays to the oil that this would have had in 1976 when the engineers designed it and called for a certain oil grade. The other thing is the 40 and 30, that is your viscosity at operating temperature. Again, don't really want to say do as I say, not as I do, but in this case, I am mixing here. But it's the best thing you can do in any case is have the exact amount of oil you need in the exact weight that you want. But as you saw, I do 1,000 to 2,000 miles between oil changes as well. If I was driving this thing for work or driving 5,000 miles a year or more, if I was changing it every 5,000 with short intervals, I would be using the exact same thing consistently. So you can see we are still draining here. I just I just got the bulk of the oil off of the drain plug. And so what I'm going to do is temporarily put our bolt back in. I say temporarily because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the filter out, knowing that there's still, really like barely an ounce, if even an ounce of oil. But we're going to just finger tighten this in so it stops draining, steadily. There is going to be a little bit of this. This is not tight enough to finish the job, but just finger tight for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to shift the drain plug a little bit, or shift the pan, excuse me. We're going to take the filter out. I'm going to do the quick wipe here, and then we're going to move the pan to underneath the oil filter. The oil filter, if I'm not mistaken, we're actually going to do it from the top. I think it's easier access on this engine from the top, so it will be up there shortly. Again, camera issues. Hopefully you guys can see this. I think the lighting is terrible, but that is the oil filter up there. What I'm going to try and do is I should be able to get it off by hand. If not, you guys will have a better view than I do from above. But you'll see it coming out shortly. Nope. Put a wrench on it. Beauty. And we'll just get it loose enough for a little bit of oil to come out, and we'll see where it wants to drain as it goes down to the pan, and adjust as needed. if you'd let me know where the oil's coming out. I'd appreciate it. Not hearing very much. Nope, still. There we go. So it's got a steady flow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off the rest of the way, and there is enough room for me to tip it up, and that way I will catch, the oil will actually flow back into the filter and stop draining. You'll see that in a minute. So, monitoring the flow, keeping a steady grip on it as it unthreads. It's going to be off momentarily. Oh, there we go. So, tip it up, actually keeping most of the oil in it still. And using my orangutan arms, just like that. There's a little bit coming out from the element, but it's 90% out. There you go. Okay, let that drain, and then we'll go back to the drain plug. Okay, next thing we did is we took our new filter. Fun fact, if you're actually following this along for your own vehicle, the Ford FE360, 390, and 460 engine, I believe, all use Wix 51515 oil filter. I really like Wix. I generally use German stuff for the German cars, but for everything else, Wix I've been very happy with. So the current mileage on the truck, 135,344 miles. Oil change completed, July 2023. Next, we'll see how much of a mess we can make on camera. I always pre-fill the oil filters with as much oil as they can hold in their mounted position. So, for example, as you saw, this goes in pretty much perpendicular to the engine. So I can't fill it all the way up, but, or I can't, can't without spilling a considerable amount. I fill the oil filter up very slowly, or sort of in stages, because it has a paper element. It actually soaks up oil. You can, and if you notice, if you fill it quickly, which we will do here, and once again, not make a mess. I've gotten it a little over half full. Once again, the way this engine is set up, it goes in just parallel to the ground, mounts perpendicular to the ground. So if I don't spin it on quickly, it's going to just waste a bunch of oil anyways. So fill it up halfway. You want to take new, clean oil and get this really saturated. This is your seal, and the dry rubber, as you tighten it onto the machine surface, if it's dry, it'll kind of chatter and skip as it goes on, and you can actually get a little bit of pressure bound up in it, which will create gaps. So you put this on, it'll slide on smoothly. The oil probably, the seal probably expands a very, very small amount as it gets oil, since it's an oil-rated seal. So yeah, once again, this is all stuff you can find in a million other oil change videos, but giving you a little more perspective on it. Again, the lighting is horrible, but I think this is your best vantage point to see the filter go on, and you'll get to see lots of nice, clean, fresh oil dripping down, since I probably overfilled it, and there's a little bit on the lip. Thread the needle. Come up here. Oh no, miscalculated. Whose idea was this? Come up. All right. Engage waterworks. There we go. All right, come over here and get it on fast. All right, that's seated. So, another important thing, how tight do you get your oil filter? I take two hands, one on either side, and I get it as tight as I can with two hands, just bit by bit. And that's seated. I'm not going any tighter than that. I got it as tight as I could get with two hands. I'm not using the wrench to tighten it. I have done, I don't know how many oil changes, I've done all of them that way, or at least the ones I've been happiest with. you know, for the very vast majority of the time I've been doing oil changes like that, I've never had a filter come off or had any issues whatsoever. Oh yeah, you guys did have a great view. Okay, we are back for that last little bit of drainage. No fresh oil from the filter should have gotten in here, but you'll see even in, I don't know, maybe half an hour, no less than maybe 20 minutes. Once this comes off, you'll see there is still more oil that is collected. Again, do you have to get every last, like, we're going to ruin the engine if there's an ounce or 2 or 3 of old oil in it? No. But we're doing this on our own time, for our own purposes. And you can see now, there's still, like, not a lot, but more is coming out. You know, if you let this sit for 12 hours, you'd get even more out. But generally speaking, we'll get another minute or 2 of this draining. Once it goes to a drip again, I think we'll call that good. And we will button it up, and we'll go back to the top side and start filling. So here's one reason, the main reason that I use copper washers is they very rarely compress. Got the same really nice face on them. And if you clean them off, wipe them off well, they kind of reset. Another thing I do is I take just an absolute sliver of silicone and I kind of give it a spin. I should give it a spin. Give it a spin. It just, that's obviously a higher viscosity than the oil. And it, I mean, if it really does anything, it doesn't do very much at all. But especially if you've got, the threads on this one are in pretty good shape, but if you have not the best seal, you can actually put a little bit, just a little bit of silicone grease on the threads as well. And that can help. It certainly doesn't fix bad screwed up threads, but it's just a nice little buffer as well. All right, I'm taking back my own words of saying I get every last drop, but this has been draining for a bit and we're ready to move on. So once again, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Make sure you start it by hand. Work it on. I do not need an impact or even a ratchet at this point. Just kind of go at it. Got the copper washer flipped over. Both sides of it look really good. It's not compressing or warping. So there we go. And even these threads are in such good shape that I can get it pretty tight just by fingers. So then I go to my ratchet. Again, 6-point, 6 faces of engagement. And I need very little pressure with this copper gasket to get it to seal. All right, that's the one shortfall of the 6-point. Sometimes you got to give it a little, get it better lined up. All right, come on, Arthur. There we go. So you can see, I'll use your ichrometer. I'll use my hand chrometer, and you can use your ichrometer to make sure it's torqued. There you go. Last thing we do is from the top down, take our dirtiest, oiliest rag, of course, and just give everything a good wipe down. You don't need to get it bone dry because it's actually acting as rust preventative, plus this whole thing is coated in oil, so I'm not going to kid myself and say I'm actually cleaning it. But what the main thing you're doing here is you want the visible liquid off so you can catch leaks over the next, coming miles. Scoot it forward and just kind of catch anything else, because any oil that leaks is going to come from here now, and if we do see fresh oil, we can trace it back. But there you go. We'll go check the front where the new filter is and make sure there's no leaks there, and then we'll go up top. Okay, looking at the new filter, There's one drip, wiped it off, and then there's still, oh gosh, this is terrible. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll get those last drops and then we'll go up top. But there's nothing new coming from the filter, so that's good. Okay, we got our new oil filter on. It's about a little over half full of oil. Drain plug is closed and fully torqued as tight as we need it to be. Next thing we do is change the oil. What we should see, good, is practically nothing, slash as close to nothing as can be. So, probably going to be fighting the glare again, but there you go. Pretty much bone dry. So, we are ready to put in our new oil. What we'll do, I have a dedicated clean oil funnel. I have a bunch of different funnels, all different sizes. This is kind of the fit-all for every vehicle for oil. See it in there. You can say, oh yeah, well, you just tip the bottle a certain way and then just use a funnel. Use a funnel. You're not impressing anyone. Just use a funnel. Don't pour oil down the side of your engine. So, also, I established, as I said, there's a screenshot or a still of the actual owner's manual showing the quantity of oil required for this engine. Read your owner's manual. You can Google it, but I really, really recommend reading your owner's manual and finding how much oil your vehicle takes. So, with that being said, we are looking for 6 quarts of oil. What I'm going to do, just to be absolutely 100% sure I'm doing everything right, I'm going to put in 4 quarts of oil, and then I'm going to check the dipstick. Okay, well, you'll see the next one. So, just in the interest of time, once it starts to kind of drip out, still going. Still going. So now, it's dripping. Here's what I do. Shake off the last drip, and I tip it up somewhere like so. And I let it drain back into one corner. This is so I can get every last drop of oil. The first one, I tip it back. Get every last drop of oil. Move on to the next one. The oil filter is half full. I'm not sure exactly how much is in there. And now I've also just done 1 full quart. So I have 1 quart in plus the filter. Another little trick here. So the reason that these bottles are offset is so that you can pour them kind of counterintuitively, but what we actually do is you tip the low side first and the bottle side next. That allows you to tip it further, because if you tip it this way, it starts coming out really quickly. You don't have as much control. But if you flip it over, you actually can tip it almost horizontal before it starts pouring. Then once it's fully coming out, let's use some hydrodynamics and tip it up. We're going to do the same thing here. Let it run steady. It's expensive stuff after all. I think final price on this high zinc stuff, I think it's like $10 a quart. So we want to get every drop. There we go. So now once again, tip it up and just set it aside. So what we're going to do, we're going to put 2 more quarts in. Got 2 of these tipped up. You guys, if you're even still watching now, are probably just going hysterical at how ludicrous I am. And this is the one I used to fill up the quart. Oh my gosh, to fill up the filter. So once this is in, this will be 3 full quarts. So there we go. That one's tipped up. Got 1 left. So now, verbalize. 3 full quarts have gone in, including what's in the filter. Number 4. Same thing. Tip from the low side. Now, let that go. And I'm not going to bring you with me because I've got the camera in a good spot, but I'm going to check underneath for leaks because really we should have done that after the first quart, but now that we've got 4 in, the oil should be making its way well into the pan. And we have confirmed there are no leaks. Did you really think there would be? Rude. Rude, rude, rude. Okay, we're dripping. So, just for the heck of it, see how much. So remember that first one we tipped back? Here it is. Look at all that. Look at all that oil that was left. This stuff is $10 a quart. So, July 2023, Lucas High Zinc Classic and Hot Rod Oil, I think is about 10, 50, 11, $12 a quart. So, but I'm not that crazy, so I'm not going to spend a whole day sitting here. But just to remember, yes, I am going to go tip it back somewhere else. So now the other one that's tipped up. See? Look at that. Still good oil in there. Those dinosaurs gave up their existence all those years ago. And if you're throwing away quarts with an ounce of oil in the bottom, shame on you. Shame on you. It's only been a couple minutes, and we don't need to wipe the dipstick because remember we put the dipstick in bone dry. We pull our dipstick out now. We are showing, there we go, just at the add line. Of course it's dripping up now. So I now have the confidence. I'm going to put one more quart in. Just dump the whole quart in right off the bat. And I will be quite confident that we are well in our safe territory. Beyond that, I will assess if it's reading full. So this engine takes 6 quarts. If I put in 5, and for some reason it's showing full still, what I will do is I'll pull out, I've got the 5th quart in all the way. I'll pull off the filter and I will put the breather back on, and I'm actually going to run it for, again, this is just above and beyond. You're doing the best oil change you've ever done in your entire life, just to make yourself, well, just so you can give yourself a pat on the back. I'll tip this up. Like I was saying, so I'm actually going to take our funnel out. Let it kind of drain out there. Flip it over. Let's put our breather back on. And I'm actually I'll turn off the camera. I'm going to just run it for like 10 seconds, just get everything to cycle. What we will do is check the oil. We got 5 quarts in. The 5th one's still making its way down, but... Oh, there we go. That's a little better. Nope, man. Well, right here. Just below the safe mark. We're just high enough where I think if I put in a full 6 quarts, that'll actually go above. So like I said, I'm going to start the vehicle, bump it, just run it for 10 seconds, shut it off, and then come back in a few minutes and check. I'll bring you with me then. Okay, started the vehicle, ran it for 30 seconds, got everything circulated. Coming back now. We have put exactly 5 quarts in, and I'm flicking oil everywhere. But if you look now, there. Oh, beautiful. Halfway up. Safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put half a quart in. That should get us right to that top line. And that way we won't be overfilling it. Because you definitely, it's better to have too much oil than not enough. But if you put too much oil in, what ends up happening is you can increase your crankcase pressure. It's hard on your seals. And the engine can the oil itself can get kind of frothy in the oil pan just because it's kind of sitting above the point where it should be picking up normally. It's really not, once again, it's better to have too much oil than not enough. You can also start burning oil. It can actually get picked up and drawn into the combustion chamber, but best thing you can do is have it right at full all of the time. That's just good, timeless advice. So, like I said, putting in half a quart, and then we are going to seal it up, make a sticker, and call this good. Okay, second last thing you do is put on your new stickers. We got July 2023, 135344. That is the mileage when it was done, once again. And it will be probably less than 3,000 miles before I do it again, but generally shooting for 3,000 to 5,000 depending on usage. And we checked our level, made sure our level's good. So, oh, fires right up. And the oil pressure creeps up, but sure enough, look at that. Dead center, cold. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I may go back and do, the next time one of the newer cars needs an oil change, I'll do that just for some reference. There may be one or two little things you do differently, but generally speaking, an oil change is an oil change. This is how I do all of them. Thank you for watching this way too long of a video for an oil change, but that's just what we do here. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.